Hey everyone, this is the first video in our Pathfinder series. Pathfinder is a story of the 25-year-old Garam who discovers she can travel to other worlds. However, traveling to other worlds causes trouble for her homeworld or base camp. To fix things, Garam will have to learn all that she can about being a Pathfinder. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy this banger story. The story opens up on the eve of Garam's birthday. She's home eating dinner with her family after an exhausting day. Her mother wonders if she's tired, saying that Garam's part-time job works her to the bone and in return pays her peanuts. Apparently, Garam hasn't been able to get a full-time job. She's always doing part-time. Her mom brings up Garam's childhood friend who now got hired by a great company. She says Garam could learn a thing or two from her. She goes on and on until Garam finally snaps, slamming down her chopstick on the table, shouting at her mother, causing a huge argument to break out. She eventually walks away from the dinner table angry before throwing one last jab at her mom that she forgot tomorrow is her birthday. Garam throws herself in her bed frustrated, thinking to herself that her mom doesn't understand her at all. But after calming down, she realizes she should be ashamed of herself for speaking to her mom like that because her parents have always supported her. All those times she failed a job interview, her mom was always on her side, cheering her on. Tossing and turning, unable to sleep, Garam wishes she could just disappear to a world that she won't have to worry about getting a job, somewhere like a fantasy novel she read the night before. She falls asleep and a clock ticks down to midnight. At the stroke of midnight, she's woken up by a bright light shining on her face. Sleepy and confused, she wakes up to a small dimensional rip in her room. Garam is understandably shocked at this. The rift gets bigger and bigger until it's the side of a door. Looking at it, she can see a pathway and trees. She thinks this is a dream, which explains why she didn't call her parents to see this, instead chooses to walk right into it. When she was reaching for the portal, the time was exactly midnight, and a minute passed by the time she walked through. Stepping out of the portal and arriving on the other side, the first thing she notices is that this world has 3 moons. Not only that, but there's plants she's never seen before. Garam looks at this strange world she now finds herself in, and upon turning around, she notices the portal has closed behind her, and she has no idea where she's at. She hears a crunch sound which causes her to jolt her head in that direction. Thinking back to the novel she read, which also has 3 moons on the cover, the female lead was under a lot of stress and was accidentally summoned by a dragon to a new world. She traveled the world, learned magic from the dragon, and ended up happily ever after. Garam had wondered if the same thing had happened to her. Would she have lived the way the hero of the novel did? But in the end, she decided that she couldn't. There was just no way she could have just left everything behind her. Also, since the last conversation she had with her mother wasn't the best, it would be the worst to leave things like that. Anyway, the first thing she thought about after seeing the giant monster making the crunch sounds was that she should apologize to her mom the first chance she gets. The monster was slashing on something with its sharp paws. It then noticed Garam standing there. It was a big giant tiger, and it made its way slowly towards her. Thinking it's about time to run, Garam turns around and prepares to bolt, but she trips and eats dust because she's so scared her legs refuse to move, and she just trembles on the ground. The giant cat looms over her, and Garam thinks this is it for her. She'll die without ever having a real job. She'll be some giant tiger's meal. Screaming and begging the tiger not to kill her, she cowers on the ground. The tiger, embarrassed, asks her how much of what he was doing did she see. She's shocked that the tiger talked to her, but both parties are confused. The tiger is confused as to why he would kill her, and she's confused as to what he's talking about when he says see. Sometime later, they resolve their confusion and are sitting together around a fire, sizzling some meat fruit. Yes, you heard that right. The tiger, whose name is Trigger, is having a hard time believing that Garam's home only has 1 moon. He offers her some meat fruit for her to try. Garam gladly accepts it, although she wonders what kind of meat it is. They eat their meal in peace. Garam asks Trigger if he thinks she'll be able to get back home, but he has no idea. This bums her out a bit, but one bite of her food cheers her right up. She asks why Trigger was out here. He tells her his salamander friend wanted to eat some meat fruit and he was just cooking it for him. Garam thought the salamander was a bonfire and is also shocked that the meat is actually fruit. It comes from a meat tree. Fascinated by this, Garam is just glad it didn't come from some weird animal. Because it's late, Trigger asks her to spend the night, and in the morning he'll bring her to humans, who will probably have more answers than him. However, he warns her to be careful, and she can't be so honest about herself like she was with him, because she might be sold as a slave since she doesn't have any connections here. Trigger will also stay around her for a day or two just to make sure she's safe. After this, she ends up playing with a tiger, rolling around on the ground, and he ends up sniffing her head. He finds it strange, but Garam actually smells very delicious. Anyway, the next morning, he puts her on a path where she'll find humans. She waits around, and sure enough, she sees a wine merchant who somehow lost control of his wine barrels, and they are rolling towards her. There's too many of them, and they are too fast for her to stop. She almost gets hit by one in the head, but a portal opens above her, and a hand reaches out from it, and all the barrels float midair. Looking up, Garam sees a Goldilocks Prince Charming stepping out of the portal. He floats to the ground, gently putting the barrels down. Garam wonders who her savior is, but the guy didn't even notice her till now. Goldilocks is Mordred, and the merchant is Jerome. They are simply traveling together since they are heading in the same direction. Jerome had no idea Mordred was a skilled magician. The two are heading to Varrock. They ask where Garam is heading. She obviously has no idea where that is, but she says she's heading there too and wonders if they can give her a lift. They agree to this, but they need to fix their carriage before continuing, so if she doesn't mind waiting, then it's fine with them. Jerome asks her to talk to the handsome Mordred while they wait for him to fix the carriage. Garam thinks Mordred is a weirdo because he just stares at her, so she doesn't really want to do that. She falls into despair as she watches Jerome walk away. Mordred stares at her again, and Garam sighs, looking away and thinking to herself she hates these kinds of awkward situations. Mordred grins mischievously and asks her if she's from another world. She's flustered and shocked that he knows. He leans closer, telling her he never thought he'd run into a pathfinder here. Garam tries to play it cool and says she doesn't know what he's talking about. Raising his hand, Mordred tells her not to worry. He put a barrier around them so no one can hear them. He asks her if this is her first time traveling to another dimension. She worries about what Tripper told her about telling strangers everything, but ends up telling Mordred that she came here yesterday. He figures that's why she doesn't seem to know anything. He asks her if it was her birthday yesterday, but she tells him it's technically today since she came here at midnight. Garam asks him if it's possible for her to go back home. He tells her it is, and to look at the back of her hand if she sees a symbol there. She checks, and sure enough, there's a strange tattoo that she has no idea when it got there. Fascinated, she tries to touch it, and as soon as her fingers tap on it, it flashes and becomes like a 3D hologram. She tries to show him it got bigger, but Mordred tells her it's no use trying to show it to him. Only she can see what it does. However, most of them work in a similar manner, so he can at least explain it to her. He says the compass is made for two main purposes, one for the path and one for the user's base camp, which means the original dimension she came from. Usually, the path compass is the round thing in the middle, and the needle inside it points towards the path. There's also a line around the rim of the compass. When that glows up, he tells her she'll be able to go home. After that, she'll be able to open the door anytime she wants to come back. She asks him to explain what a pathfinder is. He tells her it's people like her and him who look for paths by traveling between dimensions, which then brings us to the next question: what the hell is a path? He says it's like currency. With it, you can buy anything so long as the price is right. Just then, their conversation is interrupted by an arrow shooting between their heads. Mordred orders everyone to hide while he takes care of their attackers. Garam flops to the ground, her heart almost beating out of her chest. Turns out their attackers are some cockroach-looking monsters. There's a lot of them, and they surround the trio. Mordred gives the roaches a cold glance before snapping his fingers, causing a blue flame to blaze to life. He mercilessly throws it at them, incinerating them all to ashes in an instant. The display sends a shiver down Garam's spine. Mordred just continues his conversation from earlier, telling her with a path she can buy magic like this, a new body, or a whole dimension. Basically, anything she wants. Garam just tells him she only wants to go home, but he tells her no. She's going to come back here because that's the fate of all pathfinders, which is just very strange to me personally, since he said before he never expected to find a pathfinder here, but now it kind of seems like here is a hub for them. Anyway, later that night, Garam is unable to sleep, thinking about how strong Mordred was and everything he said, but she doesn't really care about it. All she wants is to go home. It's been 2 days since she's been here. Checking her compass, she wonders when it's going to fill up. She jumps up, shocked that it's finally full. She then manages to sneak away while the others are sleeping. I guess she's not a goodbye person. Mordred had told her all she had to do was think about her home and the portal would open. She closes her eyes and concentrates hard, and the dimensional rift starts opening up again. Like last time, it's firstly a small hole that gradually gets bigger until it's the size and shape of a door. Excited, Garam smiles and is about to walk into it when Mordred shows up behind her and asks if she's leaving so soon without saying goodbye. Garam tells him she's going home. She's not interested in being a pathfinder. Mordred just smiles knowingly and lets her go on her way. She wonders to herself why he's smiling like that, but she doesn't ask. She thanks him for everything before sliding into the portal. He grins and tells her to bring shoes next time. The portal opens up on Garam's room. Finally, she's back home. She goes to her parents' room hoping to apologize to her mom, but they are still sleeping, so she decides not to wake them up. She decides to grab a snack from the fridge. She's very starved. After eating, she goes straight to bed, tossing and turning, thinking that a lot of strange things happen that she's still unsure if it's a dream or not. She goes to sleep glad that at least it's over now. Later on, when she wakes up, she wonders what time it is and how long she's been sleeping. However, it's still dark outside. Checking her clock, she sees that it says it's 1 minute past midnight. She wonders if it's broken, but her phone also shows the same. She realizes that something's wrong since there's no way they are both broken at the same time. She dashes back to her parents' room, swinging the door open, shouting for her mom and dad, but she finds an empty bed. The bed is cold, meaning they haven't been in it for a while. She decides to call her mom, but her phone rings on the side of the bed. She tells herself they must have just gone out. She goes outside to look for them, but finds no one. Luckily for her, the police station is nearby, so she goes there to report her missing parents, but the police station is also empty. She goes around the block, checking grocery stores and the streets, but she can't find even a single person. She goes back home defeated. The last conversation she had with her mom runs through her head. How she accused her of forgetting her birthday, but she finds a cake her mother bought her in the fridge. She falls to her knees crying. She goes to the living room and plops down on the couch. The TV screen is frozen, and the time is still 1 minute past 12. Garam does the only thing one should do in a situation like this. Go to sleep and hope things are back to normal when you wake up. She wakes up the second time, but nothing changes. But not to worry, Garam is not out of ideas. She decides to go back to sleep. Surely this time, if she goes to sleep again, they truly will be back to normal. She wakes up the 5th time and nothing changes. This problem is very stubborn. Realizing it's not coming back to normal, Garam does the next best thing she can think of. She raises her hand, pulling up her compass. She remembers that Mordred had told her that she will come back. She wobbles back to her feet, deciding to go back. You can see in her dead eyes she has no hope that this will help. Sleep couldn't fix it, so to her all hope is lost. But she tries to convince herself that maybe there's something there that can help. She reopens the portal to the other dimension, and just like Mordred said, she comes with shoes this time around. Even though she managed to make it back, she still has no idea what to do, but Mordred is there to welcome her back. Arms folded, looking to the side, acting cool. He must not realize he's in the middle of the forest with no one around to see his Prince Charming poses. He tells her he knew she'd return. Garam asks him if he knew everything would turn out like that. He just smiles and shrugs. Garam gets angry and she grabs him by the neck, shouting at him, asking how could he not tell her anything. Mordred doesn't appreciate this at all and gives her a look that implies she must wash herself. He removes her hands and tells her she can't do this to him. He's not responsible for what happened. She apologizes for getting overexcited, but everyone she knew is gone. He forgives her, saying she must have been in shock. He tells her to take a seat and he'll try to resolve her curiosity as best as he can. After having a drink and calming down, Garam asks him what happened. He tells her when he used his paths to buy knowledge, he learned a few things. Pathfinders are not like regular people. They're born with a different soul. This is why they can talk to people of other dimensions after hearing a single word. Garam realizes this is how she was able to communicate with Trigger. She asks if they are chosen by the gods or something, but Mordred doesn't know. She then asks about her world, because the priority is finding out if she's chosen by God, then what happened to her world. Mordred says when she moved to this dimension, her dimension became her base camp. All Pathfinders can only have one dimension, unless of course they purchase more with their paths. By coming to this dimension, Garam's existing dimension became deactivated. She then asks if deactivated means time stopped in her dimension. He tells her it's not quite the same. Fixed in place is the more accurate description. The difference is that even if she breaks or builds something in her base camp, when she moves to a new dimension and come back to base, things will go back to their fixed state. Meaning if she were to go back home now, the food she ate from the fridge would still be there. Not only that, but her base camp is only activated within her reach and line of sight. What she can't see will always remain deactivated. In other words, she now has a world that she can do with as she pleases. He also tells her what she has to do now is use items or knowledge there to find more paths. This is how she'll get it back to normal. She jolts up at the mention of having it turn back to normal. Mordred reminds her that he told her before. With paths, she can buy anything, her dimension or simply her parents. He offers to help her find paths. Garam is unsure of this buying of her parents, but she vows that she'll find these paths and turn everything back to normal in her world. Mordred grins and asks her to follow him. After traveling for half a day, Garam is at her limit. She tells him she didn't expect they'd be climbing mountains and cliffs. Life here is the opposite of what she's used to. Back home, all she did was sit and study for 12 hours. Mordred brings a compelling counter-argument to this. He tells her why not just not do it. You can clearly see the value of the knowledge he bought with those paths. With no comeback to this, Garam concedes that he's right. He asks her if her needle is still the same. She checks, and it's still short. Even though they walk for half a day, it's not changing. Mordred tells her not to worry, they'll be able to find it in 2 days. Garam is surprised. She didn't think they'd find it this soon. He tells her the first path is always the easiest to find, kind of like a welcome gift. But unfortunately, she can't just use that to return her base camp back to normal. She's a bit disappointed by this. Mordred tells her if there are no more paths in a dimension, the compass will just show a round dot. So if that's not the case, it'll just take time to recharge after she finds the first path. He says it's the same as recharging at your base camp. Not sure what that last part means, but sure. Garam, preparing dinner, asks him if he reactivated his base camp. He says he didn't. She asks why not, but he tells her it's none of her business. She's fine with this answer, but she then asks him why he's looking for paths. But Mordred no longer knows he forgot. It becomes a bit awkward, and he breaks the silence by asking her what she's making. She tells him she's making ramen. He then asks if it's a precious food. When she says no, he says he thought as much, and that she must have a strong gut, cause it looks like a bunch of worms. Angry, Garam asks if he won't have any in that case, but he says he'll give it a try. He ends up gobbling it all up and quickly drinks the broth before asking for more. Garam asks him if this is his first dimension as well, but it's not. He's moved dimensions 3 times already, but he got tired of them, and there's plenty of dimensions. He wants to see more interesting worlds. He's been alive for 300 years, and Garam is the second Pathfinder he's met. I know I digress here, but Mordred has said all Pathfinders eventually come here, so how is it that? You know what, forget it. Moving on. Garam's first camping was made easy because of Mordred. They moved relentlessly trying to find paths, and each time her base camp line was done charging every 2 days, she'd go back home and restock up on food. Each time she goes back to her base camp, Mordred waits for her patiently, no matter how long she took. The path was definitely close by because the compass was different from 6 days ago, but they just couldn't find it. While searching, Garam sees a pretty flower and tries to pick it up, but Mordred grabs her hand and stops her, telling her it's poisonous and touching it could lead to blindness. Garam thanks him for saving her, thinking to herself that he was a kind person but had a sharp tongue. She's lost in her thought that she doesn't even notice they found a path until Mordred calls out to her. There among the trees, the path shines brightly. They get closer to it, and even though Garam had never seen anything like it before, she could tell that this was the path, but at the same time it felt very mysterious. Mordred tells her she can absorb it by reaching out her hand to it, and he demonstrates for her. The path flows into his hand until it's completely absorbed. Seems easy enough. Garam is glad it's not a complicated process. She asks him to take it out so she can try. He tells her there's no way to take it out. Garam is shocked, but Mordred just grins and tells her again there's no way to take them out. She asks if he just stole her path, like did he just rob her in broad daylight. He tells her to get one thing straight, he simply got what he deserved. He starts floating away. Garam chases after him, demanding to know where the hell he's going. He asks her if she has any idea how much paths it cost him to acquire the knowledge he just shared with her. He understands she might resent him for now since she's new to this, but she'll thank him soon. Seems like Goldilocks is still delusional. Chasing after him and jumping at him before he flies away, she yells at him that they are comrades. Unfortunately, she comes a bit short, and her hand just slips on his boot, and she falls back to the ground. Mordred, floating in air with a smug smile on his face, tells her they aren't comrades. He was just giving her a lesson while his path was recharging, a valuable lesson at a very cheap price. This angers Garam. She raises back to her feet, and Mordred is a bit surprised at the look of determination on her face. She chases after him again, shouting that he's being ridiculous. She makes a giant leap and this time catches up to him. She tells him that he's the one who offered to help and now he's trying to mask it as a paid lesson. She demands he give back her path to her. He's shocked for a second, but he quickly regains his composure and tells her that this path should be the least of her worries. He opens his hand and a purple glow flashes from him and envelops Garam's entire body, causing her to fall back to the ground. She tries to get back up, but her body is throbbing with the pain from the fall. She turns and calls out to him again, however, she's surrounded by cockroach-looking monsters. Mordred opens a portal behind him and tells her to think of this as her final lesson, or she could die. That works for him too. He enters the portal, going God knows where, leaving her surrounded and with no way of defending herself. The monsters hold her down, scratching her cheek in the process. While all this is happening, The only thing going through Garam's mind is that she's going to die. She watches as the monster raises its sharp claws and mercilessly brings it down on her. She wonders if this is it. Is she going to die without ever having had a real job? This is where we end the first part. If you enjoyed this story, please help get this video to 100 likes so I know if I need to continue the second part. I'm going to post a bunch of new stories this week, and I'll continue with the one that gets more attention. As always, you're watching the Snapshot, and I'll see you next time.